Hi, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Spark Reynolds podcast, YouTube, it all. Excited to be with everyone. Last week, Brian talked to Josh Cantwell. That went really well. They talked about, you know, uh, reducing risk and raising returns, which is good.
It is. Certainly is.
This this week we're talking about how couples can maximize returns and savings and all that. Sometimes we forget that when we have a significant other, it can make things a little different, especially if you're both coming from different ways of saving and whatnot. So Brian, just talk to us a little bit about strategy.
Yeah. So I'll just set the stage by saying that I was listening to a podcast a little while back about credit card rewards and like travel hacking, and they use the term two-player mode. About really maximizing your rewards and your free travel as a couple, and that as a couple you can do some things. You have some options available to you that are not available to single people. And the same really applies in building wealth and saving money and investing, running a household. There are some options that are available to you that are just not available to single people. Of course, the flip side of that is that when couples are rowing in opposite directions, they're really in trouble. Like a single person rowing a boat is going to go way faster than two people in a boat who are rowing in the opposite directions, right?
I want to go this way. No, I want to go this way.
Exactly. But if you have two people who are rowing in the same direction, you're gonna blow past that single person who's rowing. So towards that end, I want to start with a really specific case study and share what my wife Katie and I are doing. That's kind of different than what a lot of couples are doing, and how we get really intentional about pairing each other's strengths and weaknesses financially. And then we'll get a little bit broader with some more ideas that might apply to you personally, and just some bigger picture stuff. So talking about strategy, the first thing is just looking at each couple's income and benefits and how those might be able to complement each other. So my wife Katie is a school counselor. She works at international schools. So like U.S. Embassy schools around the world. We started in Abu Dhabi, and then we were in Brasilia, and now we're in Lima, Peru. And she has a very stable income floor. So she makes the same amount of money month in, month out. She has a very stable job, stable paycheck. She gets full employment benefits. And as an international school counselor, they're even better than the typical teacher or school counselor benefits in the US. So we get full health insurance for our entire family. We get free housing. We get paid flights home every year to the US. So those are great benefits for the entire family, provided by
Really great
solely.
benefits.
Yeah, fantastic benefits provided solely by her job. Now, her work also has a low income ceiling, right? It's never going to go above a certain amount of money a year, and that amount of money is pretty modest, right? I mean, she earns a teacher's salary, so we're not talking about a big salary here. She has a modest but very stable salary with outstanding benefits. So that frees me up to do work that has no floor, right? I mean, Denny and I own a business. There's no floor for the income in that business. I mean, there are months when we might make $0, right? Because our expenses happen to be high that month. Maybe our revenue happened to be low that month. That is what it is. But when you have a business, there's a high ceiling. Or really, there's no ceiling. I mean, there is no limit on what we can potentially earn as business owners. So because Katie and I aim to live entirely on her income and her benefits, that frees me up to pursue higher risk, higher reward work in my career, and not just in my career, but also in our investments. So we can take more risks in our investments because we live on a fraction of our household income. Because we live entirely on her income, we can take some more risks when our investments. And I'll give you a really easy example. We don't invest in bonds. We invest in real estate as a substitute for bonds in our portfolio. So that means that we're aiming for 15 to 30% annual returns on our real estate investments, as opposed to the 4 to 8% returns that you might be able to earn on bonds. Now, I've been investing in real estate for several decades, so I do have some experience here. This is not necessarily appropriate for the average person. I'm just giving this as an example of how you can potentially take greater risks in your investments and, of course, in your career, like we talked about earlier, if you're living on a single partner's salary. And another angle to this is, one partner, if they are an entrepreneur, if they do start a business, that can open up some other tax benefits as well. For example, you can write off some expenses as business expenses while still taking the standard deduction personally on your tax return. So, for example, as a business owner, you can write off a home office, and business meals, business travel, electronics like your computer or tablet or phone. You can write those off as business expenses while still taking the standard deduction on your tax return. And by the way, a couple of years ago, they stopped letting people deduct the home office if they are employed by someone else, right?
Yes.
Even if you itemize your deductions. So these are some of the tax advantages you can do when one partner is an entrepreneur, and it benefits both partners, right? Another example there from the tax side is an entrepreneur can open a solo 401k or a simple IRA. And those are self-employed retirement accounts, and they have way higher contribution limits than your typical traditional IRA or Roth IRA. So, for example, a solo 401k, the maximum contribution is $66,000 a year if you're under 50. If you're 50 or over, it's $73,500. And this is for tax year 2023 for reference. For a simple IRA, people under 50, the contribution limit is $15,500. 50 and over, it's $19,000 a year. So these are much higher contribution limits than employees have if they're looking at contributing to their IRA or even potentially to a workplace 401k. So again, these are some of the things you can do if you have one partner who's providing a sort of a baseline or a floor, another partner is doing some entrepreneurial things, or if both of you are together having a side hustle business or create a business, you can do these things, right? There are some hidden benefits to a high savings rate that sometimes Denny and I talk about when we talk about the FIRE lifestyle, having that really high savings rate as a couple, or even as a single person. But as a couple, if you have a high savings rate, if you are living on one partner's income and taking the other partner's income and saving and investing it, then you can potentially avoid having to pay for life insurance, having to pay for long-term disability insurance, because you're already living on one partner's income. So if, God forbid, something happens to one partner, the surviving partner and maybe the kids, if you have kids, they're still going to be okay. They'll be able to keep surviving on the remaining partner's income because you're already only living on one partner's income. So that money that you save on buying life insurance, on buying long-term disability insurance, guess what? That money can go straight into investments. You can build wealth even faster. The same principles apply on childcare. If you get used to living on one partner's income and saving and investing the other partner's income, and then you have kids, well, guess what? One person can maybe take a couple years off of work to stay home with the kids, right? Or maybe they work part-time, or maybe they take a pay cut in full-time work that's more flexible, right? You can do these things if you have a high savings rate, if you're living on one partner's income, saving and investing the other partner's income. So these are all things that you can do to really ratchet up your game as a couple and getting intentional about how you're structuring the way that you live as a family, as a household. So, all right, I just talked a lot. Denny, let's expand the scope a little bit here, and let's talk about some broader things that couples might be able to do.
Well, communication obviously is good for any relationship.
And that's the baseline right here. You have to, or rather the foundation. You have to have good communication if you're both going to be rowing in the same direction.
Absolutely. And, more often than not, you'll have one couple that comes from a family that does, that spends and saves a certain way, and then the other one comes from maybe an opposite point of view. So
Right.
it can be a little bit tricky to kind of get your stuff together. So it's very important to discuss things like, risk adversity. How much are you? How bad? What will you take? And the whole 9 yards. Savings style is so instrumental. And I'll
We
be
still struggle with
really.
that sometimes in my
I was
household.
just I was just gonna say I am a spender, and my husband
Yeah.
is a big time saver. And so we've had our bumping heads, but he was the smarter one, so most of the time he won. And just to show you, he went through some health issues, and he's a business owner and he owns a construction company. So he had to be out of work, but we were okay because he's a good saver and I'm a good investor. So it works. So having that commonality and knowing how to use the differences to work together is so important. And I'm all about writing goals down. I have a vision board every year that I put on my wall next to my desk,
Love it.
and we discuss it, and we have like certain goals that we want. And I think writing them down as a couple is super important. Um,
No
yeah.
question.
The other thing is learning how to be creative. There's so many things you can do. We've talked about house hacking.
And you and Jerry have gotten really creative with your house
Mhm.
hacking. I mean, you have house hacked at least 3 different ways that I know of, maybe more. So
Well, I rented a room out when I was a single mom and I couldn't afford the rent. So not only did I get help paying the rent, but I also got free babysitting. So, and babysitting, even back then, childcare was so expensive. And I
oh yeah.
had 4 kids. So it was really expensive. So, I mean, they're as creative as you can be. Even now, my daughter and I bought this mixed use property we're living in now. My husband has his business here, and she owns part and I own part. So it reduced both of our monthly costs. And it's literally a separate, like a duplex. So, there's, and we took in an international student
Love that.
for 4 years, still have a relationship with him. And it was way more of a stipend than I expected. It was close to 2,000 a month. And back then that was really helpful. I mean, obviously you have to, feed them and everything, but can't
Can't
not
just
feed
chain him
them.
up in the basement with a doggy bowl.
No, no, no. Actually, we were lucky. He was from China and he cooked for us. So
There you go.
he loved it. But that was a great thing to do. And there was even a time where we rented out garage space. I mean, so as creative as you can be, do it. I mean, think about it and do it. People have rented rooms. I have a friend who has extra rooms in their house, and they rent them short term. Like they
Yeah,
almost
on
have
Airbnb.
a B&B.
Yeah.
And they not only like it because it's a lone person who's now a widow, and it just helps them have people around, and they make some money. So there's like so much you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you one other example that's couple specific with house hacking. My cousin, before she got married, she was engaged to this guy. They each had separate homes, separate apartments at this time, and they listed her apartment on Airbnb, and whenever someone booked it, they would just crash with the other person.
Oh,
So
wow.
so they listed the entire apartment for rent on Airbnb, not just a room, but listed
Right.
the whole thing. Someone would rent it for maybe 10 days a month, and that covered most of the rent. So you can do these sorts of things as a couple. And actually, if I remember correctly, that may have covered all of their rent or mortgage payment. Renting this place 10 days a month. So, yeah, there are all kinds of ways you can get creative
I just one more example. This
Yeah,
just
please.
happened. My husband did a job for this gentleman who had some ground, and he didn't want to deal with somebody living there. So there was a separate building, and what he did is expanded the separate building, made it 5 storage units, and has none of the hassle of people running around and all that. And he was able to, yeah, it's just crazy the things you can do.
Yeah, and the nice thing about running storage units too is you don't have the complex landlord-tenant laws. So if someone stops paying, you evict them very quickly, and their stuff is gone, or you kick their stuff out, and that's it. Whereas evicting, as you know, Denny, evicting a residential renter takes many, many months, and in some markets can take almost a year. I've had to take almost a year before. So, I mean, these are the kinds of things that you just have more options as a couple. You can get more creative with the house hacking. You can get rid of a car. Katie and I, when we were living in the US, we were living in Baltimore, we each had a car, right? Because that's what people do in the US. We moved overseas, we moved to Abu Dhabi, and we were like, oh, do we each need a car? Like, what if we tried sharing a car? Let's just see how it works. And it was fine. It was totally fine. And then when we moved from Abu Dhabi to Brasilia, we were living in an apartment that was about a 20-minute walk from Katie's school. And we were living in an area with a lot of walkable amenities. And we're like, what if we try living without a car entirely? And then we did that, and that was fine. It was great. And to this day, here in Lima, we also don't have a car. In the US, the average annual cost of a car is almost $9,300 a year, according to AAA. And a lot of people find that hard to believe, but all of those expenses, from maintenance to insurance, repairs, gas, all that stuff adds up to a lot of money. It's not just the car payment. It's all of the other costs that come along with owning a car. $9,300 a year. I mean, that's a lot of money. So if you can get rid of a car as a couple, go down to one car, or maybe even no cars, you can save a ton of money to invest.
Absolutely. Yeah, we share a car, and my husband obviously has equipment and trucks for his business, but I work from home basically, and yeah, we have no reason to have 2 cars. So
yeah. So again, housing. So housing's the number one expense for most people, right? Transportation is the number 2 expense. If you can get rid of your housing payment as a couple by house hacking, and get rid of one car or even both cars, you are just going to come out so much further ahead financially. You can have so much more money to save and invest and build wealth, build passive income, than the single person living next door. So these are the kinds of things you can do if you are really, again, rowing in the same direction as a couple.
There is also things like you can make it a game to save, create competition, maybe a little, reward at the end that one of you can give to the other.
Razors. Yeah. Do all kinds of fun stuff.
Exactly. There's so much you can do. I mean, going to restaurants, especially now, is ridiculous. I mean, even the not so good restaurants, you're spending $60 to $100 for a couple. And that's if you want good food, forget it.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so many things that you can do there, from cooking together. I do not like to cook, but my husband and I have done that, and it's just fun. We both just laugh and mess around and whatever. And we still have like a fun night, and we're not spending $1 million on a night out, where I have to wait 45 minutes even to get to a table to pay an extraordinary amount of money.
Right. Yeah. And as a couple, you can share the responsibilities of cooking. So Katie and I alternate cooking. So each one of us only cooks, 3 nights a week or whatever, but we have 6 homemade meals a week. So, again, it's just pooling that labor. So I want to bring it back full circle to where we started this episode, with travel hacking and travel rewards. As a couple, so we talked about that 2-player mode with travel hacking. And the reason this works so well is that the greatest rewards come when you sign up for a new card, right? You get that initial bonus, that sign up bonus when you sign up for a new card. However, there's only so many new cards that an individual adult can sign up for in a given year, right? Because there's usually a minimum spend you have to hit, and if you're signing up for new credit cards every month, it's going to ruin your credit. So there's a speed limit, right, on per adult what you can sign up for with new cards to get those outstanding rewards. With two people, you double that speed limit, right?
Right.
You can alternate. All right, this quarter I'm signing up for the Venture X card or whatever, and we're gonna put all of our groceries on that card to hit the minimum spend, whatever it is. Next quarter, it's Katie who signs up for the new card, and we get the bonus rewards on that card. And then the next quarter, it's me again, right? So you can stagger this.
And if you are self-employed and you have a business, your business can also do that.
Exactly. Again, tying it all back together. So yeah, these are the kinds of things you can do as a couple that just makes it so much easier. And there are even things like Southwest's Companion Pass, where the second person flies for free, basically.
Oh,
you can do all these kinds of things. These doors open up, when you and your partner really get organized about and get intentional about designing your finances, optimizing your taxes, creating a business potentially or not, but you can do all these kinds of things. So Denny, is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we wrap for the day?
No, I just think, I'm almost retirement age, but because of my creativity and a father who was also very creative, I am okay. And I think that when you're young, if you start using some of these principles, you won't worry about, God forbid, if somebody gets sick, or if you do want to, you want to have a family and somebody wants to take off and be home with the children. So I just think, and it can be fun. I truly believe that it can be fun. I mean, Brian's traveling everywhere and you take trips everywhere. So, I mean, it can
Went
be
to
a lot
Machu
of
Picchu a
fun.
couple weeks ago.
And I can't even say that. So that's it, make it fun, communicate, learn.
Yeah. So to tie it together, there are just all kinds of efficiencies that you can do as a couple. Hopefully you guys got some creative ideas out of this episode, and the sky's the limit. There are a million ideas out there that we haven't come up with or didn't cover on this show. So get creative with it, get intentional with it, talk to your partner, and we will catch you next week.
Absolutely.